So welcome to Integrate Online, presented by West Virginia University's Reed College of Media. Today's session is brought to you by a renowned online master's degree program in marketing communications and the award-winning Public Relations Student Society of America at WVU, who are in one of your screens right now. Wave, guys. So we are so excited for what is ahead. Thank you for joining us. Please be sure to keep your mics muted for this session and send your questions in the chat. We'll have time a little later on the session for Q&A with our guest experts. So drop all the questions there, or just drop us a note. Let us know where you're coming to us from today. Today we'll be discussing, as you know, making your mark, promoting one of the top bourbon brands in the world with Kaylin Massey, a strategic public relations account executive with 5 years of prior experience as an Emmy award-winning news producer. We also have Bob Louder joining us, who started at Doe-Anderson in 1993 and has worked on a variety of accounts in fields ranging from transportation to sporting goods to healthcare, and of course, spirits. And then Kat Moto is a Maker's Mark account manager at Doe-Anderson. She specializes in strategic campaign development and project oversight for the brand's North American, regional, and private section lines of business. So now I'm going to turn the session over to our guests to share their story of how they helped Maker's Mark, one of the best known bourbons in the world, a bourbon that I am particularly fond of, having grown up in Bardstown, Kentucky. If you have questions or anything you want to share with one another, please feel free to use that chat function. Guys, I'm turning it over to you now.
Well, hello, everybody. I'm Bob Lauder. I work on the PR side. Kat and Kay and I all work together at Doe-Anderson. Kat, Kay, you all want to say anything?
I'll go ahead. I just want to thank you all for having us. We are so passionate about our brand. We've been with Doe-Anderson has been with Makers for almost 50 years at this point. And there's just a lot of heart for it. And so whenever we have the opportunity to talk about it, we are more than willing to. So excited to walk you through some of our stuff today.
Okay, any?
Well, Kat just covered it and we had the introduction, but I just want to say hello and thank everyone for taking out time from your evening to listen to us today. So really excited.
Well, we'll get rolling, and I think we've got a lot of material to cover. So we've got about some 50 slides to get through, and we'll try to do this as quickly but effectively as we can. So I am going to start sharing my screen. And my first question is, can everyone see this at this point?
Yes.
Okay, let me then start. Oops, I started in a bad spot. I'm going to go back to the beginning. This is what happens when you have technical difficulties at the beginning. So, Maker's Mark, so glad you guys could join us. So here's what we'll cover in tonight's meeting. First of all, I need to throw a disclaimer in there. This is not a meeting about getting you all to enjoy bourbon. We have to be very careful about how we market ourselves. We're not allowed to market ourselves to anyone really less than 25 years of age. So just a disclaimer, this is not about bourbon. This is about marketing. So we're not trying to make the bourbon look good, although you can't make it look bad. You'll find that out. We'll talk a little bit about who Doe-Anderson is. We'll talk about Maker's Mark and its history, and bring you up to speed on where we are today. And then we'll talk about the PR side of it, which is what the meeting is all about. And then you'll get a preview of Holiday 2022. So you'll get to see that before anybody else does. A little bit about who Doe-Anderson is. The name is cool. It's been around for more than 100 years, and Doe-Anderson sounds a lot better than Elmer and Warwick because it was founded by Elmer Doe and Warwick Anderson many, many years ago. Currently, we're about 145, 150 employees. We've been traditionally an ad agency over the years, but agencies nowadays have to adapt. I joined the agency back in the 90s when we added PR, and it was the first time they'd added anything outside of advertising. But we're a very robust agency with web development, social media, you name it, we pretty much do it. I'll talk a little bit about our mission statement. Because it's very simple, and I was on the team that actually put this together. And if you've read corporate mission statements, they're usually not something you can remember, but ours is pretty simple. Be the first into the wilderness, carry the water, be one with the ant and the anteater. So just about everybody who works here can tell you our mission statement. And it's pretty simple. Be first into the wilderness is about just being creative. Carry the water means own everything, take ownership. Don't just be somebody who wants to boss somebody around. And be one with the ant and the anteater is about showing empathy and sympathy for your colleagues, your clients. You have to get along with all these folks in order for everything to work. So make sure you get along with everyone. A little bit about what we do for Maker's Mark. What does Doe do for Maker's Mark? Well, it's a little bit of everything: brand strategy, content production. We produce all their ads, their creative content. We do their web design and development. And we'll talk a little bit about the PR side. And it says Kentucky Public Relations because we do have a partner on the national side, and it's Evans out of New York. And that leads into the next slide, which is it takes a village, it takes a team to make a brand like this really work. For years and years and years, and when I first started on it, it was Doe-Anderson and Doe-Anderson only, but it has grown into a monster bourbon brand. But we still wanted to have that down home, all shucks kind of appeal to it. And I think we're pretty successful at it. These are all the other agencies that touch this. The only one I really know is Evans, and that's our New York partner on the PR side. So they're very creative, very good on PR promotional stuff. A lot of what you'll see us talk about is PR earned media in Kentucky. And Kentucky has to be king for bourbon. It has to be great here in order for it to work. Talk a little bit about the brand of Maker's Mark. It's really kind of a romantic brand in some ways. It's just a cool story to talk about. It starts with the Samuels family. Bill Sr. and Margie were the ones who started this back in the 1950s. But Bill was, it depends on how you look at it, a fourth or sixth generation distiller. But he knew all about distilling, and Margie was sort of the governor of the brand. She was the one that brought all the cool and the panache to the brand, and we'll talk a little bit about her as well. And then in the 1970s, Bill Sr. turned it over to Bill Jr., and then it was about 10 years ago, Bill Jr. turned it over to his son, Rob Samuels. Now, we are owned by Beam Global, but the family is still running things down in Loretto, Kentucky. A little bit about the history and what bourbon was like back in the 1950s when Bill started this. In one of the conversations, bourbon was mostly a rye-based drink, which means it was hot. And Bill's mother, Bill Sr.'s mother, said once, someone asked her if she wanted some for an after-dinner drink, and she said, well, heck no, that stuff will blow your ears off. And she was talking about the family recipe because it was a hot bourbon. Although I will tell you, the story does not use the word stuff. It uses another word that begins with S. So that stuff will blow your ears off, is what the grandma said. So what did Bill do? In the 1950s, he went and burned the recipe that the family had for 170 years. He started over. Him and his wife, Margie, were baking bread because they thought rye bread was harsh, but wheat bread had a kinder, gentler taste to it, and that's what they did with their bourbon. Margie came in. Bill developed the recipe for the bourbon, but Margie did the branding for it. She came up with the name Maker's Mark, and that was based on the stamp that pewter whitesmiths put on the bottom of their work. They would stamp it with their mark, and it was called the Maker's Mark. And then she developed the logo. The S is for Samuels, the IV is for Bill as the fourth generation distiller, and the star represents Star Hill Farm, and that's the name of the farm that Maker's Mark Distillery sits on down in Loretto, Kentucky. Now you see a little asterisk down there. Bill was really the sixth generation distiller, but the first two distillers in the family were not legal. They were moonshiners, bootleggers, so we don't claim them as part of the story, but it's an interesting part of it. The distillery, when Bill and Margie restored it back in the 50s and the 60s, Margie turned it into a tourist attraction, and no one had done that with a bourbon distillery. They were manufacturing plants. And so she was way ahead of her time with that as well, because now you look at bourbon tourism in Kentucky, and it's akin to what wine tourism is in California. So she was the first to do that. And because of that, she was the first woman inducted into the Bourbon Hall of Fame. She also came up with the bottle design. She collected cognac bottles, which were often square and dipped in wax to give it that rich feel. So she applied this to the Maker's Mark, and she dipped the first bottle of Maker's Mark in red wax. She melted the red wax in her kitchen deep fryer. And as the saying goes, her fried chicken was never quite the same again. Here's a little timeline of Maker's Mark, some of the pivotal moments back in the 50s, as we said. They started a whole new type of bourbon. As you know, it takes a while to age bourbon. It takes generally 5 or 6 years for Maker's Mark. So the first bottle of Maker's Mark came out in 1958. And nothing much happened for almost 20 years because it was just this sleepy little nice tasting bourbon that was sold mostly in Kentucky and surrounding states, not a real wide distribution, but it was always thought of as a great bourbon. But bourbon back in those days was not very popular. Bill Samuels Jr. took over the brand in the 1970s, and his dad gave him a little piece of advice: don't mess up the whiskey. And again, he did not use the word mess. He said, don't screw up the whiskey. So he said it a little bit more emphatically than that. But Bill never touched the whiskey and would not mess with it. And again, decades still went on along without any change in what Maker's Mark was about, content or the formula of it was all about. In the 1980s was a pivotal moment because Bill was more into marketing, and in the 70s is when he teamed up with Maker's Mark, and they just started to develop the brand beyond what Margie had done. And there was actually a PR firm in town that I'm familiar with. It wasn't Doe-Anderson at the time because we didn't have PR at the time, but this PR firm got the Wall Street Journal to do a story on Maker's Mark, and it changed everything. Maker's Mark immediately became a national brand based on the Wall Street Journal story. A little bit more about the timeline. So again, first bottle comes off the line in 1958, and it's not until 2010 that they come up with something other than traditional Maker's Mark. And that's when Bill Samuels was getting ready to retire, and he wanted his own expression. And he came up with one called Maker's 46, and it's called Maker's 46 simply because they used a wood stave, an oak wood stave, to kind of enhance the flavor. And it was the 46th wood stave they tried before they got it right. So that's where that name comes from. A year after that, Bill turns the reins over to his son, Rob, who's running it now. Another pivotal moment came in 2013. And this is, as I said, Maker's Mark is owned by a bigger company out of Chicago and now New York. And in order to increase profits, they decided to change the proof of traditional Maker's Mark from 90 proof to 86 proof. It was a horrible mistake. And in a matter of weeks, they went back on that decision. Consumers of Maker's Mark revolted, and we turned that into kind of a PR opportunity, if you will. It's one of those, we messed up, we're sorry, we did everything wrong, you all are right, we fixed it, and Maker's Mark went back to being 90 proof, the traditional 90 proof. And then since then, more things have been done to launch private labels, as well as to Maker's Mark named, the best, the most influential bourbon of all time just a few years ago. So let's take a look at where they are now. What does this brand look like and feel like now? Well, it looks a lot like it did in 1958 when they dipped the bottle for the first time. So, and that has been on purpose. It's always to stay true to Bill and Margie's personal pursuit of making a better bourbon. The principles are simple. It just needs, keep it simple. You all have heard of the KISS philosophy, keep it simple, stupid. It was always, let's not get too cute with things. It is perfectly flawed, just like anything else that's handmade. It has to have some flaws to it to show that it is handcrafted, and it's carefully crafted. It was always about making a great bourbon. It's always about what's in the bottle. And that brings us to what the current campaign is about. Our title tonight is Making Your Mark. The current campaign is called Make It Remarkable. So if you make it personal, it goes a long, long way. And as we talk about it being perfectly flawed, you can see this is interesting because there's a bottle that went a little too deep into the wax when it came out. And that's what being perfectly flawed and just that kind of all shucks attitude is all about. This is just a brand board, if you will. It just shows you how consistent we are with making sure this brand looks the same no matter where it is. So that at a glance, if you see it on a billboard, if you see it painted on the side of a wall, if you see it in a store, that's Maker's Mark because it's got that strong red color to it. It's the red wax dip. It's that cream colored label that transfers to the background of the other pieces that we produce. Again, when you look at it in banner ads, on labels, on pop-up bars, on in-store displays, everything has a nice, very consistent look to it. As we said earlier, the distillery is just this great asset for it. And This year was a pivotal moment for Maker's Mark because they became B Corp certified. What does B Corp certification mean? Other companies that are B Corp certified are companies like Patagonia and Ben & Jerry's, and they tend to be companies with a conscience, if you will. They're companies that want to do what's right. So they want to give back to the environment. They want to take care of their customers. They want to take care of their employees. They want to give to charity. And Maker's Mark passed the test to become B Corp certified this year. A lot of it has to do, they were cited strongly for their environmental contributions. They have a solar array that powers all the rick houses down there. By the end of this year, they will have their zero landfill initiative will be fulfilled. They have a very robust recycling program. For more than 70 years, they have been giving back to the community and helping other firms or other organizations with contributions. And we'll talk about that and how we use that in public relations some. We'll also talk a little bit about the world's largest white oak tree research repository that they started a little over a year ago, about 2 years ago now. Again, and a lot of this has to do with bourbon is a product of nature. It takes water, it takes oak trees to make the barrels, it takes corn, it takes wheat, it takes barley. And it takes really good water, as I said, and those are the things Maker's Mark wants to protect. And that's why they are so energy conscious at this point. We talked about Bill Sr. and Bill Jr. doing great things with the whiskey. Rob Samuels now is trying to make his mark by making sure that this company is environmentally sound and doing its part. So I'm going to play this video for you really quickly, and it talks a little bit about the B Corp initiative.
I'm excited to share that Maker's Mark has been named the largest distillery in the world and the first in bourbon country to achieve B Corp certification. Although they would have never said it themselves, my grandparents were conservationists long before that term became fashionable. They lived and worked by a simple philosophy that we continue to uphold today. Make your mark, leave no trace. Bold, proactive, regenerative actions, coupled with comprehensive efforts to leave nothing harmful behind, all to ensure that future generations inherit a world that's even better than the one we did.
As a B Corp, Maker's Mark is now a part of a small but growing circle of global companies leading the way in creating a more sustainable future. Through actions like recycling all waste by 2022 with the Zero Landfill Initiative, sustaining white oak trees with the world's largest research repository, and protecting our natural water source with our watershed sanctuary, in addition to decades of philanthropic community outreach and ethical business practices. Becoming a B Corp signals to the world, when you choose Maker's Mark, you're choosing a company that pays it forward where it counts, investing in people and the planet.
That's why at Maker's Mark, we have a 100-year vision, not just a 5-year plan, to create a whiskey worth sharing and build and preserve a place where we welcome our friends and treat our colleagues with dignity and respect, never forgetting that everything we do today will define our tomorrow.
Oops. Okay, so here you have this company that is visually rich, has a great history, has a great product. PR should be simple and easy, right? Well, in some ways it kind of is, in some ways it kind of isn't. And I'm going to walk you through some of our case studies of what we've done over the past year and a half for Maker's Mark, just to raise awareness here in Kentucky. First, I want to give you, back in the 1990s, probably the late 90s, when I was put on this brand, Bill Jr. gave me some advice, and it was how he sat everybody down. And again, it was just Doe-Anderson working on this. And inside Doe-Anderson, it was 3 or 4 people who worked on the account. But Bill says, Bob, we don't take ourselves too seriously. Keep it fun. And if you didn't keep it fun, he would make it unfun for you. He was a very strong-willed person. He also said, don't brag. We do not beat our chest. We let others speak for us. Others talk about us. We know we got a great brand. We don't have to make up stuff. Other people will say great things about us. Keep it personal, as you've already heard. When we talk to the media, we like to talk to them one-on-one when we can. That can be extremely difficult when you're trying to get widespread publicity. We'll talk about how we kind of accomplish that in some ways. And Bill said, please don't write news releases and please don't hold news conferences, because I don't want to see me quoted in news releases, and I don't want to look like I'm a corporate person going to news conference. We make whiskey. We don't try to make the news. Kind of a backdoor way to get in the news, but it's worked. It won't work for all brands, and most brands won't do that, but it works for Maker's Mark. Talk about some stuff we've done in the past years, and this is looking beyond bourbon to get yourself in the news. And in this case, you know, we've got great liquid to talk about, but sometimes we have other things to talk about. These are the two leading media outlets in the state of Kentucky, the Lexington Herald-Leader daily newspaper and the Courier-Journal in Louisville, and we have been on the front page of both of them in the past year. For the Lexington Herald-Leader, it was for the White Oak Project. This is a research project that involves the University of Kentucky, which, as you probably know, is in Lexington. So guess who wrote this news release about this great project at Maker's Mark? Well, we wrote it, but guess who distributed it? It was the University of Kentucky. It looked like their news release. We thought it would carry more weight to do it that way. Another story that landed on the front page of the Courier-Journal is about a masonry guy, a guy who basically builds bridges and stone walls, but he does it without using mortar. It is a lost art. It's called dry stacking. And I never even thought of doing a story about this, but I was down at the distillery as he was building the bridge, and I started talking to the guy, and he was so loaded with personality. And he started talking about dry stacking bridges. And I'm saying, how do you keep this bridge together? And it just, in his big Scottish accent, he's like, well, Bob, all these stones are brothers, and they just lean against each other, and they push on each other's shoulders, and they hold each other up at night, and they never fall down. And I thought, a guy who talks like that is a PR guy. I got to find an audience for a guy who speaks like that, because you can't script that kind of stuff. So we got a Courier-Journal reporter down to do a story on it. And again, because he was so good, it turned into front page story. And you can see this is Rob Samuels in this little tunnel with him, the part under the bridge. So pretty brave right there. Cool story. We talked about philanthropy and how you can tie yourself in with a brand successfully using philanthropy. And this is about raising funds for charity. This is using the Margie bottle. Again, it's taking something, we put Margie's label on the bottle, traditional Maker's Mark. We had Bill Jr., her son, sign these, and then we sold, I don't know how many of this batch there were, 5,000 or 10,000, and we gave all the money to Bellarmine University's Women of Color Entrepreneurship Program. So, and then who announced this? It wasn't Maker's Mark, it was Bellarmine University. And this is, clip on the right is the dean of the business school at the University of Bellarmine University, talking about how Margie was a pioneer and what all she had done for the brand. And this was from a video news release we produced and sent it out, and it got widespread coverage in the state of Kentucky. New product introductions. Anybody who works in PR loves new products. It is what we sometimes live for, because hey, it's something new. It's what the media want. This is our newest product. And if you remember from the timeline, we went more than 50 years without introducing anything. Now they have an interesting way of creating different flavor expressions of Maker's Mark and releasing them in limited editions once a year. So once a year, you know, I'm finally, as a PR guy, I get to do a new product introduction. And we just finished one. In fact, we're still kind of in the midst of one. And we do this in a personal way. You know, we deliver these bottles to select media. Kay drove all over the state last week delivering some of these bottles. And then we stop and we talk to the reporters when we deliver them. It's not that we can do everybody, but we take the most important reporters and we treat them that way. This is another program that ties it in with charity. If you're familiar with Keeneland, it's one of the premier racetracks in Kentucky and in the country, and it's just where the Breeders' Cup was held just last weekend. So every year we do a special bottle with Keeneland, and Keeneland designates the money to go to a charity. And so for the past couple of years, it's been going to Lex Arts, which funds art programs in Lexington. And the other way we make this newsworthy is, again, it's about the bottle, and we use Kentucky artists to create different versions of the label to showcase horse racing. So these things, we don't have to do PR for them because the collectors know they're out there, and they sell out the first day they go on the shelves because they're in limited supply. But it shows what Maker's Mark is doing for Kentucky artists and just to help raise funds for groups that need it. We're also interested in business reporters. Last year, Maker's Mark started something called the Whiskey Drop. And it's the first time a distillery or any distilleries in Kentucky have been able to ship to consumers directly outside of the state. And it was basically illegal. Finally, legislation was approved to do that. But we're way behind the curve. California has been doing this with wine for many, many, many years. But for us, it's a news story. And, we marketed it that way. I told you we don't like to write news releases, but we did this time. So because we were going for business reporters, it just seemed to make sense this time. We also like to cater to, we have a very small group of about 10 bourbon reporters in Kentucky. We call them the Bourbon Geeks. They call themselves the Bourbon Writers Guild. They're not connected other than they all know each other. They write for different publications or media outlets. These are people who know bourbon frontwards and backwards. There was a very interesting program called Entry Proof last year where Maker's Mark did an experiment. The woman in the middle is Jane Bowie. She's their master taster, and they put some bourbon in barrels about 8 years ago at different proofs. And bourbon goes into the barrel for Maker's Mark, it always goes in at 110 proof. Some bourbons put it in at 125 proof. So Maker's Mark said, what would happen if we put it in the barrel at 110, 115, 120, 125? And they created these different profiles of these different taste expressions, but there wasn't enough liquid to go around, but it was still a really cool PR program that we could get some publicity on. So we invited these bourbon geeks, if you will, only our elite bourbon reporters. We asked them to come to a place called the Hound Dog Press, which is this frozen in time printing press in Louisville, Kentucky, that still rolls paper off. They do have a roller press. So it's 19th century technology. They're creating these posters that go with these bottles. And again, this was one of those projects or products that once it got out in the marketplace, it disappeared in no time. But the program was cool. We didn't have to promote it. We knew it was going to sell out, but it was still a great program. Another charity group that we work with is the Lee Initiatives. Chef Edward Lee is a prominent chef in Louisville and in Washington, D.C. I think he's a James Beard award-winning chef. And we had done this program for a couple of years where we raised money for his charity, which supports women in the restaurant and bar business, supporting them in managerial roles and promoting them in those roles. So what we did this time around, the media was beginning to lose interest in this program. So we said, what if you guys did your own barrel and then we'll sell that? So we invited that same group you saw before down to Maker's Mark to create their own Maker's Mark version. And that's what this photo is all about, with them down there creating their own. And we bottled it and got more publicity on a story that had pretty much run its course. We kind of figured out how to get a little bit more juice out of it. Finally, here we are right now entering the holiday season. It's always a good time for us because we look for stories. The typical one is the one on the right where, okay, they're going to do a story on Christmas cocktails. We'll give you some cocktail recipes. We just had another story that actually broke today in the Courier Journal on the Margie bottle that's for sale down in Kentucky. And you can only buy the Margie bottle at the distillery in Kentucky now. Last year, we started a program called Whiskey Flights where we would pay if you were traveling and you needed to pack whiskey in your checked luggage and you had to pay for that checked luggage, Maker's Mark would reimburse you so that you could get your whiskey to your family and friends. So that was a pretty cool program. And we were able to get a little bit of news out of that. So that brings us to what has been our most recent PR program called Glass to Garden. That probably makes no sense to you guys, but Maker's Mark is crushing the glass that they have excess down at the distillery. You end up with glass that's imperfect or breaks. And what do you do with it? Do you send it to a recycle center, put it in a truck, burn more fossil fuel to get it to where it's going? they had decided to invest in crushers. And so they can use it, as weird as this sound, in gardens, on paths. And I'm going to let Kay and I worked on this, and this was kind of like a news conference, but we won't call it a news conference. It was really something, looks like Kroger did, but I'll let Kay take it over.
Yeah, so Glass the Garden, like Bob was saying, this is just one of those incidents where we did not talk about the bourbon at all. We talked about everything that Maker's Mark was doing outside of making bourbon, how this was going to go to benefit the communities surrounding the distillery, and how we're going to expand it across, how we were putting it in Louisville and Lexington, and et cetera. So here you can see myself, Bob, and the rest of the PR team, and a few other people at Doe-Anderson. We were pulling together some media kits that we had to hand deliver. So I think we did 20 of them, something like that. And we just put in there, we just made it exactly what it was. We wanted to put the story inside of this media kit. We have a bottle there that's full of the crushed glass. We have a small pumpkin, an apple, a zucchini. We have some flowers because we wanted to resemble the glass to garden, but it went outside of what was just inside of the box. But with the press release that we printed out, we used recyclable paper. The paper that is inside of the box to stuff it was recycled. The box itself was made from recycled paper. So we sent the message all the way through and through. You can go to the next slide, Bob. So now this isn't normal Maker's Mark fashion to do a news conference, but we still did one. And there we had our community partner that we partnered with, which is Louisville Grows, and then Kroger, where the crushers, the pulverizers were being stationed for the pallet program. But Louisville Grows, and along with a community garden in Lexington, they both kind of do the same thing. One's in Louisville, one's in Lexington. We're going to donate all of the crushed glass from this program to them so they can use it. They typically have community gardens in urban communities, where are low income communities, and they're donating all that to them so they can give it to those community gardens to just help prevent root rot and all those things. You can look into that. I'll save that for later. You can go to the next slide.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're good.
Come on. There we go.
So, but we did do the news conference in Louisville. So we got plenty of coverage in the market. So you can play that WDRB story.
All right. Thanks, Mark. Maker's Mark takes glass to the garden. Today, the company unveiled glass pulverizers at several Kroger wine and liquor barn stores. You could take empty bottles there, crush the glass, and then donate it to two community garden organizations, Louisville Grows and Lexington's Seed Leaf. The crushed glass could be used in the garden to circulate air in the soil and help with drainage and moisture.
Customers can bring in empty bottles, and as long as they fit in our machine, it can be anything, wine bottles, pickle jars, anything like that, where we're going to toss them in this machine. This machine's going to pulverize it to sand.
The soil at Blackacre, as in all Kentucky, is pretty clay. And clay soil often needs amended with compost and with sand to help make it drain better.
Maker's Mark has been crushing excess glass at its Kentucky distillery for more than a year. The company says this new program will also reduce the waste.
Cool.
So the program itself, again, just
Thanks, Mark.
ground home.
Maker's Mark
Take
is
glass
The
to
new
the garden.
tonight at 4 after you enjoy some
Uh-oh,
Maker's Mark.
sorry.
There we go.
Got a problem
The
here.
program
There we go.
itself just pushes through the initiative of no waste, leaving no trace, making the world a better place, right? So just over the matter of 4 days, we were able to get 38 mentions, mostly in Louisville. We also got some outside of Louisville, like in Eastern Kentucky. Some of this even went as far as Florida. And it just turned into over almost 10 million impressions, and then there was a lot of social traction on it too. We was getting a lot of retweets and shares, but none of this stuff was never put out by Maker's Mark itself. Like anything that was put out on social media was either put out through Kroger or just the news stations that posted the stories that they wrote. But we had a fun, like, coming from my background, I just left the newsroom less than a year ago. So I was able to use some of that when we are delivering the media kits, sometimes you have a relationship that you're trying to, it's a thin line that you're trying to stay on. You want to help the media because you want to look at them as an asset, because they are. So you want to give them something, but you don't want to give them too much. So in this case, we were doing a media event, and right before the event, we wanted to not only give the media something physical that they could hold, but we were sending out a media advisory. And Bob and I sat and talked, and we were like, well, Bob wanted to go ahead and send them a little bit more video. And I'm like, don't do that. Because if you send them too much, and then they're just not going to show up to the media event, because then they have everything that they need. And then it's like, okay, we're not even going to waste a person on that. Most news stations are short staffed anyways. So that was like the, little things that you had to think about prior to us pulling this event together.
Yeah, I'm going to interrupt you for a second, because this is the B-roll that we sent out to stations, but as he said, we didn't send it out until about 2 o'clock that afternoon. So the news conference timing is always important when you do a news conference. The timing of this news conference, 10 o'clock, it gave us an opportunity to edit real video from it, get it approved by legal, which is not easy in the whiskey industry, and then get this up to all the TV stations in the state by 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Sorry, Kay, stepped on you.
No, you're fine. You just said what I was about to say. So instead of us sending the video that we were going to send, we just waited to shoot new video at the media conference with sound bites, and then we sent them a package. But it was, hours after the event was over. So if they wanted it for their 12 o'clock show, they were going to have to come out. But if they wanted to wait and use it for their later evening shows or the next morning, then they would just have to wait for us to send it to them. But still just keeping that relationship to where it's like, if you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. But if you don't show up, you're gonna have to wait a little bit, but I'll give you something to spike your interest. So go ahead. And then this is just the bourbon blogs. We, like Bob said earlier, we do tend to focus on our bourbon reporters because that is their niche item. So they always give us some love, especially when it's just about the bourbon. But when it's outside of the bourbon, they tend to give us some love as well. So they did a little bit of that. And again, this was one of those incidents where we used when we were all done and we were looking at the analytics, it was just kind of like a learning experience. Where did we get coverage? We got coverage in Louisville. We didn't get really any coverage in Lexington. I think one of them got picked up in Lexington, but we didn't get much coverage elsewhere because the media event was held in Louisville. So after the fact, it gave us time to look at everything and kind of see what we can learn from it, what we can do the next time if we do another event like this. So yeah.
Sorry, Kay, I was.
No, you're fine. You go ahead.
I was checking to see if there were. I don't have access to the chat window when I'm in presentation mode. So if people are asking questions, I don't know. So just a couple of last things about the PR. We talk about making sure you have to make it easy for the media. And because we don't write news releases, that's one of the easiest things you can do is just give them the words. And we do that. And as I said, but we try to let others do it as well. But we also have a very rich photo library that is out there. And as you can see, we keep it on Flickr because it showcases it really well. So if you want to go in and look at the Glass to Garden albums, we've got 22 photos in there. And this is showing you what it looks like when they use it on paths at the distillery. We just got a story today about the Founder's bottle, and that's about the Margie bottle here. The new wood finishing series is the BRT. So there's a library for just about everything out there. And then the same is true for the video side. So when we produce a video news release, we put it on Vimeo. That way they can look at it very quickly. They don't have to download it first, and then they can decide if they want to download it. And Vimeo allows you to do that at 1080p, or I'm not sure it's 4K, but for news purposes, you don't need anything at 4K. So there you go. I've been blowing through that pretty quickly, but it's a lot of material to cover. And I'm going to turn it over to Kat and we'll have time for your questions and answers. But we're going to give you a sneak preview of what Holiday 22 is going to look like. Again, switching gears, going away from PR and looking at the advertising and promotion side of things. So I'll turn it over to Kat. And Kat, you tell me how to do these slides.
Okay, I will tell you. Thank you, Bob. I'm So excited to share the holiday 2022 campaign work. This is a project that is very near and dear to my heart. The client come and briefed us back in like August 2021. So it has been a long time in the making. There have been so many moving pieces, and we are almost there, very close. But today I'm going to mostly be showing you a lot of the retail work that we did. That's the primary area of business I'm in for the North America line of business. And I'll show you some of that, and then also touch on some of the ways that we've done things above the line for digital, for PR, and just a couple other cool efforts that are part of the mix. So to kick us off, so the big idea is rooted in the fact that the brand as you know it today is rooted in the fact that Bill Sr. made a great change. He burned the family's 177-year-old recipe. He went out on that limb and did something unexpected, which led to the iconic Maker's Mark brand. So given that, we wanted to really harken back to our founder's vision. And with this campaign in particular, the client had asked for something that was iconic and unexpected. They wanted something similar in a sense to like the Coca-Cola polar bear ads that just felt buzzworthy and had the public, saying, what are they going to do next year for holiday, and just kind of create that sense of interest. So this is our big idea, is that we're celebrating the change of tradition. We're reimagining nostalgia. Essentially, we understand that families look different now. They have changed, and that impacts how we spend time together and how we interact with one another. So like our founders, we are not afraid of tradition. We embrace it, we champion it. And basically what this campaign aims to do is to highlight real people and what they look forward to, and give them something to look forward to, and inspire them to break traditions year after year. So why this works? There was a lot of consumer and competitor insight that went into this to finally align on this specific direction. But we know that the most important thing about holidays is that sense of togetherness. People crave it. But in that same vein, the holidays stress us out. You're running around like crazy. You got to buy gifts. It's equally a happy time, but also a very stressful time. So we feel that consumers are not really enjoying the full potential of the holidays. They're not really experiencing that magic that they should be. So what Makers is trying to do, we want to position ourselves as the bourbon brand for holiday moments that matter. We want to put the spirit back into holiday spirit by reimagining what it could really be, and inspiring consumers to join our traditions with a twist. You can go to the next one, sorry.
I'm trying.
All right, so this is just like a little sneak preview of the general aesthetic of the campaign. It's very retro, 50s, 60s treatment vibes. It should spark a feeling of nostalgia, but when you look a little bit closer, there are little like Easter eggs throughout where you're like, oh, okay, and like it keeps you grounded in the fact that this is a modern era image. The theme throughout is just very bold, very colorful, visual juxtapositions. We really want to bring in like a visually interesting contrast between old and new. So again, just reinforcing the notion that Makers is the brand that champions these modern moments, but we are classic and we stay true to our roots. So what was birthed from that was the Reimagining Nostalgia campaign. Out of it fell an integrated program to reach and engage with consumers and shoppers through all of the major key touch points. So to break it down, because there's a lot and I'm trying to keep it as high level as possible, the three major areas we seek to address are consumer, off-premise, and on-premise. So I know when I started at Doe and was on a baby on the Makers account, I was really confused by what off-premise and on-premise means. So off-premise is essentially anywhere that you would not be consuming the liquid on site. So think like liquor stores, grocery stores, wherever you can purchase alcohol. And then on-premise is where the alcohol consuming happens. So like bars and restaurants, or activations like festivals, things like that. That's what on-premise is. And then consumer is more of the above the line, and that gets more into TV placements, national print, paid social, digital website, like anything that could have national or global visibility. You can go to the next one. So these are the holiday bottles for this year. They should, at this point, be on shelves. They should have just been released to put on shelves. If they're not in a store near you, it's because your local retailer is probably trying to drain the current inventory. But this is what they look like. And the whole premise behind this is like, this was the first step in challenging the norm. We've never done gold foiling on the label. We've never had it like the logo where it is. We've never done 3 holiday labels. We've never, there's a whole lot of like, we've never done this before. And it all started with the holiday label. And that was sort of the catalyst for everything that sparked out of the campaign. So this is something that one of our agency partners helped develop. And essentially this was like, they're the ones that design the labels. And so we saw these labels and then they were like, okay, now go develop like a full scale campaign based on this. So this is our starting point. And then I will show you everything that came out of that. All right, so this is what the print and digital POS looks like. With the caveat that this nowhere near the slide does not do the full suite of assets justice. It's just a nice quick visual to help you digest. So here we have featured the classic, the classic ad, as well as like the 46 ad, the 101. We have a family ad, and that's the To All a Good Flight one. We have one that pushes the Maker's Holiday bottle sweater, and then one for the free personalized holiday label that we offer on our website. If you want to go to the next. This is for more of the on-premise activation. So what you see here on the left, these are just some like menu inserts that you could see like in the back of just like a little tabletop setting. And then we have table tents. And then the image right here on the bottom right, that's one of the holiday neckers, which I think our copywriter and design team just absolutely crushed it. It's also clever, like the sum assembly required and like one gift you're welcome to shake. It's just all such a fun retro play, and they just knocked it out of the park. And if you want to go to the next slide. This is some of our retail display elements. Every year we do something, we offer it to our markets where they could purchase, like what you see right here is a pole topper on the left. We have a barrel tree, and it's just a little bit more subtle play into the pattern work and the overall vibe of the campaign. Not too overpowering, so it could live in market and in retail with the other larger, more bold elements alongside it. And then we do a couple little like giveaways and just like gifting focused assets. So that's what you see here, the enamel pin. We have the VAPs, which like come with the mug. And this little render you see at the bottom, this is a basically like we handed this out to our field teams and said, if you were to go do a sampling activation in a Total Wine and More, and people can come and try all the different makers products, this is what it should look like ideally. And as you can see, it all works really nicely together. It's like a solid mix of the holiday forward campaign, but then also some of our more evergreen assets. So this kind of going back to what I was saying about how everything just needs to like flow together and look really cohesive. Like there's a lot of different like unexplored colors that the brand has not really done in the past. So the client was like, we just need to make sure that everything like looks and feels really cohesive and like that it just works together nicely in retail, because she was like, I don't know what so-and-so in some random market is going to like put out on the floor. But as you can see, it's like, no matter how somebody might mix and match it, it's going to turn out beautiful and striking and feel like a united front no matter what. These are some of the wearables that we concepted. They were just, again, sort of like a different take on the expected, like doing a green forward or a blue forward hoodie or t-shirt, and then just doing something funky and different. And I think it all just turned out so beautifully. And then just talking beyond retail, this is still a work in progress, and we are like tying up the final pieces of this. But this is more of the above the line initiative that has been, working for some time. It's gone through a lot of ups and downs, but what we have landed on is a really, really cool partnership drop. We are partnering with another purposefully inefficient brand that is big on sustainability. It's female owned and founded. And it was such a perfect tie-in for all of the Makers values and things that we hold near and dear to our heart. And we've come together to challenge a certain holiday tradition. And we're doing a lot of stuff to promote this, but the activations at a glance are a big PR push, lots for digital, website, paid social. So the digital activations will actually show the new tangible tradition, while the PR campaign will leverage the partnership drop to tell just a deeper co-branded story and why this makes sense. And then also position it at the same time as a holiday must-have. We're doing a couple bigger VIP events in Brooklyn. And then we're actually going to have a celebrity influencer, not really influencer. It's just a straight up celebrity promote this and talk about it. And we're all really, really excited about it. And you should be seeing it here in the next couple of weeks. So be on the lookout. Some of our social stuff might already have dropped, some of the teaser videos, but it'll be fun. We're so excited. And I think that's everything. And if you all have any questions, happy to answer them. I feel like I just flew through my part fast, but yeah, thank you all so much.
Yeah, thanks, Kat, and thanks, Kay, and thanks, Kat, for bringing this to our attention. We love talking about Maker's Mark. I will jump into one of the questions online from Nick, and he asks, he kind of makes a statement about, it's unique to see an agency have this long of a tenure with a client, and it's, as far as I know, there's a few situations like this out there, but I can't recall what they are. But we were the first ad agency, and that goes back to the 1970s. In fact, Bill Jr., when he joined the company, he was made the advertising and marketing director, and his dad didn't give him a budget for about 3 years. So they didn't do anything. They hired Doe-Anderson, and we sat around coming up with cool concepts that never saw the light of day. So how did we keep this for 20 plus years? Well, we've worked really hard on it. We've followed the mantra that Bill Samuels Jr. laid down for us, those talking points that I talked about, don't brag, keep it simple. And we've also been very careful about making sure we put the right people on it. We were probably ahead of the game when we were doing personality testing and making sure we had the right people on this account, and that they would be the right people who would be creative and would challenge people as well. And that can be a double-edged sword when you have people who want to challenge others, because you remember our mantra, be one with the ant and the anteater. So you still got to get along with folks. So how did we handle the growth over the years? I don't know that I can answer that, because as I said, when I worked on it the first round, there were about 3 or 4 people that worked on it. And I come back 5 years ago and start working on it, and there's about 35 people in the agency working on it. So it's a big brand, and it has grown immensely, but it does to stay true to its roots. And we try to make sure that all the work that comes out is just as good as it can possibly be.
Mine, I've got a student here at the WQRSSA chapter who's going to come on camera real quick.
Sure.
And ask her a question.
Sure.
Oh, actually, the camera's over there. Y'all.
Just peek your head in. Hi. Oh yeah, okay. Here, I'll just turn a little bit. Okay, hi, my name is Mary. I just wanted to thank you guys for getting on here. Maker's Mark is very important to my family. My grandfather passed away in February, and Maker's Mark was his absolute favorite. In the last few years of his life, he was very sick, and the only thing that really got him through the day was having Maker's Mark. So he loved to have his toasties at the end of the night. So we love Maker's Mark in my family. And one thing I just wanted to ask about is that he did get the chance to come down to Kentucky. And I think I believe you have a program where you can hand dip your own bottle and get your name personalized. So if you would just talk about that. I don't really know if that was you guys specifically who really came up with that, But if you could just talk about that, I'd love to hear about it. Thank you.
It's called the Ambassador Program, and it's changed a little bit over the past year. And it used to be you could just go to the website and become an ambassador, and we'll send you a gift every year at Christmas time, and then we'll put your name on a barrel head, and when that barrel matures and is ready to go into a bottle, you're invited down to get part of the actual bottle that barrel came out of. So it's a great program. It goes back to what we said. If we make a good product, and if we don't beat our chest, if we don't act too proud, others will talk about us. And that was one of the early findings when I worked on this thing very early on, is that we found out that word of mouth worked a whole lot better than advertising. People were very skeptical of advertising. So the Ambassador Program is about taking care of those people who really admire the brand. There's no cost to get into it. And I can't remember, it's not as easy as it used to be to get into it. But we'll let people in. It's not that we're trying to exclude people. I think the numbers just got so big, and we do give away gifts as part of it. So if anybody wants to join as an ambassador, and again, I got to be careful. I'm not asking you guys to drink bourbon, right? So, but it's a cool program to be in.
Just to follow that up, Bob, something that was part of our sustainability push, because I also worked on the Ambassador holiday mailer gift. They had sent out an email just saying, in an effort to be as sustainable as possible, if the holiday gift is not something that you find of value, you can go on our website, log in, and toggle your settings to where you would rather opt out of getting a holiday gift. So that was an initiative that both helped us reinforce our sustainability messaging, while also from a budgetary and strategy standpoint, we wanted to make sure that only the most engaged ambassadors were ambassadors, that that they were actively responding to the emails we sent them. And then that also significantly helped the budget, because it was just absolutely massive. So right now I believe it has shifted a little bit more to an invite only, but everybody that was an ambassador that opted in and wanted to remain in this program, they have stayed. So no changes if you're already an ambassador.
Yeah, the Ambassador Program has been very successful. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? We'll stick around.
What's my Christmas gift this year?
I can't tell you, but it goes out the first week of December. I think they drop it that Friday. So
yeah, for the students in the room, and for folks who know me, know that I have a whole crate of Maker's Mark stuff in my office that I use for example. So if you haven't seen it, come by. I'm happy to show it to you.
So you have the socks, you have the puzzle, you have the sweater, right?
Yeah, the scarf and the ice cubes and the bottle cases, the ones that the gag gift casing things. Yeah, I've got them.
I'm trying to remember.
So yeah. Huge fan of Makers, and so grateful for all the insights tonight. I wish we had more time to hang out with you, but I'm mindful of the fact that it's 6:30 and this is when we said we were going to wrap. So if anybody had questions and they didn't get them answered, please feel free to email them to me. I'll reach back out to you all with a single email if there are questions that we need to follow up on. But I want to thank you all again so much for coming and talk to us tonight. It was my dream at one point in life to be in the shoes that you are in right now, but then I wanted to be an educator more than I wanted to be a true paid brand ambassador for Maker's Mark. So anyway, thank you again for joining us. Be sure to visit integrate.wvu.edu for upcoming sessions and updates. And I'm going to go ahead and drop that in the chat in case you are unaware of Integrate and our ongoing series. And then for those of you who might be interested in the best of branded creativity, particularly those of you who are enrolled in the IMC program or an undergraduate education program, we are going to take a group to Cannes International Festival of Creativity this summer so we can continue the conversation there. If you're interested, I'll also drop my email address in the chat and you can reach out to me and I'll share more information about that. So For everyone else, thank you again for joining us. I've loved hearing from you. It's a great way to start my holiday season, if you will, knowing behind the scenes Maker's Mark stuff. So I feel like an insider. Thanks for that. All right, guys, thanks so much and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank
Have a
you.
Good night, everybody.